Friends, I love this place came from a picture that showed up on Facebook one day. My friend Jake is going to put it up on the screen here in a second. My friend Katie, who teaches in the state of Georgia here, she had a brilliant idea. They were moving out of an old school building and into a new school building. They were going to tear that old building down. And she said, let's do something great. Let's give Sharpies out to the students and let's have them write messages on the wall. And she posted the pictures, and that picture right there showed up, I love this place, on the wall. And it showed up on my Facebook feed, and I went, that's it. That's what I've been trying to do for 17 years. That's what I've been trying to do for every student that I've ever taught in my entire life, is get them to think, I love this place. And normally when a student writes on the wall, not a good thing, right? Student is probably a trombone player or a drummer. They're the ones who do most of the writing on the wall. But at the end of the day, the student didn't write, I love my teacher. The student didn't write, I love the band. The student didn't write, I love my school. The student wrote, I love this place. And I've never walked into a room and looked at the cinder block walls and been like, man, I love those walls. Just toss me a cinder block. I want to give it a hug. No. When you start thinking about it, what would cause a student to write, I love this place on the wall? It's the memories. It's the people. It's all the things that they experienced in that room. It didn't matter that the room was 50 years old. It mattered what was happening in that room that was going to impact that student for 50 years. And so when I grabbed that and said, let's make that the book title, that was where it all started. How do we create places where teachers, students, administrators, custodians, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, parents, all of them think, feel, and say, I love this place. And I mentioned earlier with Andrew that it's all about culture. I think culture is the way to go. It's what we feel, it's how we're impacted, and there's a specific way that I like to look at culture. It's very kind of esoteric. How do I define it? And so the definition that I came up with through a couple of different sources was this. Culture refers to the values, attitudes, and expected behaviors that impact how your school operates. Those three words: values, attitudes, expected behaviors. Culture refers to the things that are most important in your classroom, in your school, in your life, your values. But it also refers to the way that you feel when you're in the room, attitude. The way that you treat others when you're in the room, attitude. And it's the way that you act when you're in the room, expected behaviors. This is how I expect you to behave. The culture that I want for my school starts with the values and ends with student and teacher attitudes, student and teacher expected behaviors. And I think anybody that says, how do I define culture? Start there. Values, attitudes, and expected behaviors. Now, when you think about culture, it's like, is it really a big deal? I'm going to give you three truths about culture that I've learned along the way in 17 years plus in education that I think you will resonate with in any job that you've ever had. All right, the first truth: unhappy people complain about leadership. Think about that for a second. Any job you've ever had where you were unhappy, any classroom that you ever had where you were unhappy, you probably complained about the person in charge. Lord knows we never complain about our leaders, right? I've never once complained about the president in all my 46 years of life, right? It's just what we do. It's part of leadership. The leaders get complained about when things aren't going well. But the second truth is that happy people rave about culture. Every great job I've ever had, I said, man, this place is awesome. Tell me about your job. It's awesome. Maybe I'll talk about how great Gina and Andrew are. Maybe I'll talk about how great Greg is or whomever after I say, I love working at blank. When people asked about Hillgrove High School, which is where I taught, I would say, I love it. There's nothing that we don't do well. The leaders see us and we're free to do great things. We love to talk about the culture of the place that we're in. But here's where it all comes together. The people that you lead, the people in the same space as you, they choose to love a place, loathe a place, or leave a place because of both. Now, I don't use the word loathe in conversation very often, but I had to go with 3 L's, so go with it. Love, loathe, or leave a place because of both. Think of places that you love. The culture was great, the leaders were great. Places that you loathed, probably neither the culture or the leadership was great, or those places that you've left. A lot of the time it's because of one of those two things. And it begs the question, are leadership and culture somehow connected? And the answer is absolutely. The second question becomes, when you take this and extrapolate it to schools, not just talking about students, but teachers as well, does the data match up with what I'm saying? And the truth is yes. So I'm going to give you a survey. I'm going to give you a little bit of data that I thought was really powerful. In late 2020, School CEO ran a teacher satisfaction survey. They surveyed over 1,000 teachers, 300 randomly selected districts, 50 states. 79% of the surveyants were millennials and Gen X. That's me and people younger than me. Over half of those people had master's degree. They were well-educated young teachers. And what they said was, these 8 things are most important: culture, flexibility, size, performance, school leadership, mentorship, geography, and advancement in my career. Right? Advancement kind of goes under salary. If you've ever taught in a school, you know the only way to make more money is to teach there for longer or to take a higher paying administrative job, perhaps, right? But not a one of them said, how much am I getting paid? Because I think many of us go into education knowing I'm not going to be a millionaire. It's just the way it's going to be. It's another one of those things we can't control. But the thing where it really the rubber meets the road is when you look at how they ranked them. All these 1,000+ teachers said geography is the most important thing. I don't want to drive a long way to school. That's great. However, short of moving the school building around, can't really control that. You can control where you work, but if somebody's commuting a long way, other than asking them to move, there's not a lot you can do. But bro, look at number 2 and 3. School culture, school leadership. The 2 and 3 most important things by these 1,000+ teachers, master's degrees, millennials, Gen X, most of the teachers said school culture and school leadership are the most important thing. There was another study called What Do Millennial Teachers Want, focusing just on that generation. School culture, school leadership were in the top 3. Not a single person ranked salary in their top 3, which is good news. Going back to what I said earlier, let's focus on what we can control. We can control school leadership. We can control school culture. And I like to focus on the inextricable link between the two. What's the point of working on leadership if it's not going to impact culture? What's the point of working on culture if it's not going to impact leadership? I believe that they're tied together, and the entire book is about the concept that through growing as a leader and growing leaders, we create a culture that impacts everybody in a positive way to the point that they would say, I love this place. And there's one kind of way that I tie it together that I think you're going to remember. I love this place actually means this place loves me. I feel seen, I feel heard, I feel valued, I feel challenged here. I love this place means this place loves me. That's worthy of being written down right there. I feel pretty smart when I say that out loud. I can't believe I came up with that. So, what I want to do for a second is just let you think. And while you're thinking and putting your answers in the chat, I'm going to keep teaching. But for where you're at, in your district or wherever you work, what values, attitudes, and expected behaviors do you strive for? What are those things? What are those things that are most important? What attitudes do you want people to have? What behaviors do you want them to participate in? I'm going to stop talking for a second and just let you think and post that in the chat. Dr. Gale, that's a good one. Inclusion, respect. Good, good. Keep them coming. Honesty and integrity, love it. Oh, Brandy, that's so good. Shared vision and goals. Yes, Nikki. Cammie. John, unity. Love that. Love all of what I'm seeing. So, 2 big ideas in the book that frame everything that I talk about in the entire work. Here they are. The first one, I can add value by growing as a leader. If I grow myself as a leader, I can impact my students, I can impact my staff, I can impact everybody in my circle simply by growing as a leader. So a good chunk of the book is meant for people to grow as leaders. Anybody who reads it will grow as a leader, and there's a whole framework by which I think you'll do that. But the magic happens when you amplify that value by growing others as leaders. I talk about it, a culture of growing leaders, meaning our culture is to grow as leaders. Because the leader that Patrick was at Hillgrove High School and my 300 students, I could only impact so many at a time. But at the end of the day, if I grow them as leaders within the framework of how I grow myself as a leader, then my impact, our impact, is shared and amplified out into the community. There was a story about how this kind of all started. I left it out. If you've seen me do this before, I left it out this time. Of where one of the measures of success, especially in your elective classes, is number of fannies in seats, right? Can't teach an empty chair. And so in the band world, more students equals good, right? We want as many kids as we can get. There's no limit. So if they're showing up and they're staying for a long period of time, we know that we're doing a good job creating culture. And for most of my career, early on, we averaged 90 to 100 to 120 students coming over from the middle school from 8th to 9th grade. Right after I got promoted, there was 1 year where it dipped to 80. A 20+% decrease in recruiting and retention is a big deal. That's when we start going, uh-oh. We're not going to have the same resources. We don't have the same students. We don't have the same talent level. What are we going to do about it? And so I asked my wife what she thought the problem was. She's a teacher as well, an amazing human being. And she said, Patrick, I noticed something about you, and that's you teach a lot of leadership, and you don't always practice what you preach. Which wasn't exactly what I wanted to hear at the time, but it's what I needed to hear at the time. She said, if you were a better leader, I think things would get better. And I took that to heart. The first leadership book I ever read was this one. Read was 360 Degree Leader by our friend, John C. Maxwell. And it impacted my life like no book I've ever read before. It showed me how to be a leader, and it showed me all the things that I was missing. I loved it so much, I read it twice, and then I formed a leadership club with my students, and we read it together. And they said, this is hard to read, sir. This is written for adults. And so then we spent time translating it, and then Tim Elmore walked in the door and said, I already did it for you. Here's a curriculum by which you can do this, called Habitudes, now called iLead. And we started growing leaders as often as we could. And I'll tell you the punchline at the end. But the reason why I think that phrase, I can amplify value by growing others as leaders, is so important is because it's not limited to what I can do. It's limited to what we can do, and we is way more powerful than me. And so I would grow leaders and send them to do as many things as possible. And they became a mouthpiece for the organization, and things got so much better. Everyone wins when leaders get better. I love it. So, here's the leadership principle that I bring forward in the book that's kind of the main idea. The leader that we need to be, that they need us to be, the people we're leading, tough and tender. Tough and tender. Think about any leader that you've ever had that was somebody you respected, somebody you loved, somebody who grew you very well. They were tough and they were tender. They cared about you and they grew you. They loved you for who you are, but they loved you enough not to leave you who you are, right? Challenge and empathy, you see where I'm going with this. And as we consider that part of tough and tender leadership, they're not switches that you flip on and off. It's not like, I'm tough today and now I'm not tough, right? No. They're dials that we turn. Turn up the toughness, turn down the tenderness, and vice versa. You see how that works. And so one of the things I love to talk about is, what does it look like if we turn the knobs too far? Let's say you're a leader who's turned the tenderness and the toughness all the way down. You don't care about people. You don't care about standards. You're just trying to get to retirement. You see what I'm saying? The low tough, low tender leader, they're invisible. They might as well not even be there. They say things like, these kids these days just don't get it. They say things like, back in my day, I'm just going to leave that one there. Nobody wants to work anymore, right? They're broke, they're busted, they're disgusted, they're done. The invisible leader, which is none of you. Invisible leaders don't come to webinars. The invisible leader, what do they get? They get disengagement. Nobody wants to engage with somebody who doesn't care about them and doesn't care about the results. That's not you, so let's move on. If you turn toughness all the way up and tenderness all the way down, I call that leader the drill sergeant leader. My wrestling coach in high school was an actual drill sergeant, Mike Mason. He was a rectangle of a human being. Like, you look up Jarhead in the dictionary, he was a Marine, Mike Mason's picture appears. He was tough, tough, tough. We loved him, but he was tough. If it's all about toughness, I don't have time for that touchy-feely stuff. I'm the one in charge. Get with it or get lost. The type of person that only cares about the results and doesn't care about the people, they're going to get rebellion. I think it was John Maxwell who said, rules without relationship leads to rebellion. If you've got somebody who only cares about the rules and the results and they don't care about you, you're going to eventually rebel. It's fun to get things done. It's not fun when you're getting things done and burning out in the same process. So too much toughness in leadership often leads to rebellion. We want leaders who love us. The flip side of that is somebody who's turned up the tenderness to 11 and turned down the toughness to 0. And I would call them the cotton candy leader. I owe Andrew McPeak for the cotton candy leader. He came up with this one for me. Think about eating cotton candy. It's great for a couple bites, and then you're like, what am I going to do with the rest of this? It's very sweet. It's too sweet. Cotton candy leaders are very sweet. They're too sweet. They make exceptions. They're all about live, laugh, love. They're all about second, third, fourth, fifth, 19th chances. They extend deadlines. They'll do anything to get you to like them. They don't care about the results. They care about the people. And what they really care about is how the people feel about them. So what happens when you become a cotton candy leader and you're too tender and not enough tough? You get entitlement. When I'm used to being given everything that I want, when I'm used to a leader going the extra mile for me, even when I don't do anything for them, when I know that leader will say and do whatever it takes for me to like them, I'm going to be entitled. And what happens when the tender leader turns up the toughness because they got to get things done? The people say, why are you being so mean? I've gotten that one before. That's when I knew I was being too tender. Mr. Irwin, why are you being so mean? Nope, just holding you accountable. Let's talk about what that looks like. What I'm advocating for is a balance. Twisting and turning the knobs as needed. You know, good leaders know when to turn up the toughness when it's time to get things done. But good leaders also know when to turn up the tenderness when the person needs you. That balance between tough and tender, what do we get? We get respect. Think about every leader you've ever respected in your life. I bet they were both tough and tender, and I bet they utilized those skills in the right times for the right purpose. A tough and tender leader is what we need everyone to be, in their own right, of course. How do I get this to people? Let me introduce you to something real quick. This is a short commercial. We have a program called I Lead. It was once called Habitudes, and we kind of moved the things together. They're memorable images that lead to meaningful conversations, that lead to people making choices and making changes. The images are the thing. And when we lead with images, they give us an anchor by which we can tie difficult concepts down and make them concrete. So when you think about tough and tender leader, here's the image I want you to think about. The velvet-covered brick. The velvet-covered brick is the thing. When you're a tough leader, you're solid on the inside. Values, principles, attitudes, behaviors. You manage those things. You're firm in who you are. When you are a tender leader, you wrap yourself in velvet where people feel that warmth, that softness, and that relatability on the outside. If I need relatability, don't hand me a brick. If I need you to give me a hug, don't toss me a brick, right? But if we got to get things done, I don't need you being made of velvet. I need you to be made of toughness so we can get things done. Both of them in tandem work really well. And the summary, kind of the truth behind it is, good leaders are tough and tender. They're soft on the outside, firm as a brick on the inside. We, you, me, all of us must be tender with people, yet tough with our standards. Tough and tender leadership is where it's at. That's the whole first part of the book right there. You're going to love it. Tough and tender leader is not quite enough. And so the middle part of it, the biggest part of the book, is a framework by which you can be a tough and tender leader. John's going to light up when he sees this. The phrase that we use is good things come to those who hustle, my friends. Hustle was a rallying cry at Hillgrove High School. It was a reminder that we had very little time to do the things that we were trying to do. It was get it done as quickly as possible, maximize the time we had together. And then it became a value system by which all of this is built, which I love. Each chapter is built around one of these values. A tough and tender leader is a leader who is humble. They share humility. They realize it's not about them. A tough and tender leader is understanding of the people around them. They know their strengths. They appreciate diversity. They leverage the composition of the team to get things done as much as the competence of the team. A tough and tender leader is a scholar of leadership, of their job. They are focused and they get things done. They understand what it takes. They build trust with the people that they lead. They have great leadership habits and attitudes, and they care about excellence. So there's one chapter of the book for each of those 6 values, laying out with stories, metaphors, and action steps on how you can practice each of those 6 things to become a better, tough, and tender leader. When you look at them, there's 6. 3 of them are tough, 3 of them are tender. It's truly a memorable and easy way to remember some challenging concepts. And I think you're really going to love the stories. Now, in closing, I want to kind of land the plane on this idea of amplified culture. Because it doesn't stop with me. The whole point is it's not a book for you, it's a book for y'all, right? Be a great leader, share that leadership. A culture of growing leaders is what I am advocating for. And I use the word amplify on purpose. I'm going to nerd out. If you're not a musician, this part's going to be confusing, but here I go. We have a concept in music called resonance. This is a picture of me getting ready to conduct the orchestra in Carnegie Hall, hair flip. If I had hair, I would flip it. When we went to Carnegie Hall, it was one of the last concerts I ever conducted. It was Dvorak's New World Symphony. And my dear friend David Doak invited me to conduct the finale of the Symphony from the New World. You can't see the brass and percussion and woodwinds, they're behind the strings, but they were all there. The idea of creating resonance with students is getting them to make sounds that are deep, reverberant, and emotional. They work together to create an emotional experience for themselves and for the listener. That's what a resonant idea does. When we're resonating with one another, we're feeling, we're resonating, it's deep, it elicits a response. Leadership that elicits a response is resonant. And when we talk about sound, here's the nerdy part. When we talk about sound, there's 2 properties of sound. There's superposition and interference. Superposition is how 2 sounds relate to one another, their position, and interference is how they interact with one another. And there's 2 types of interference: destructive and constructive. Destructive interference looks like this. The 2 sound waves mush up against each other. They're exact opposites of each other. You see how those peaks and valleys match up? They're not supposed to do that. The net result of destructive interference is cancellation. Your noise-canceling headphones that you use on the plane operate under this principle. It creates a sound in your ear that cancels out the sound outside of the ear. It's never a perfect system, but you understand what this works. Now take the metaphor to leadership. If I'm leading one way and Gina and Andrew are leading the exact opposite way, the net result of our leadership cancels itself out. Maybe you've had leader teams where it's almost like go ask dad. Go ask mom, right? Maybe you'll get a different answer, cancels out the parenting. Same thing goes for leaders. If I'm not sharing a clear vision and making sure that the people I'm leading are on the same page as me, I'm canceling myself out. They're canceling me out. How do we share that vision? The fun part is when we get to constructive interference. Constructive interference is what we're going for in music, with the sound waves working together in concert so that the result is amplification. That sound wave is twice as big and way more beautiful than the one by itself. When we got that orchestra to work together on Dvorak's New World Symphony, which go listen to it, it's amazing. It sounds like Jaws and then it gets better. What we're doing is amplifying sounds by getting them to work together. What I'm advocating for is amplifying leadership impact and value by working together under a shared vision, a shared values, shared attitudes, shared behaviors, culture. How do we do it? We have to be intentional. It's the only way. Growing leaders intentionally. I had a principal, Angela Stewart, in the last several years of my career, who freed me up and allowed me to develop leaders. I said, hey, I've got an idea. What if we did leadership training every week in band? She goes, are you going to play? I said, if we get done. But Angela, what if I took one day out of the week and grew leaders in my classroom? Like, I got 300. I can hit 15% of the school with leadership values in one day. And she said, go for it. So when are they going to play? I was like, we got marching band after school. It's going to be fine. So all fall, we grew leaders once a week with iLead. In the spring, we did it after school. So I hit 300 in the spring, or in the fall. In the spring, it was volunteer after school, and about 100 plus would show up, and we would do leadership values. All because Angela allowed me to do that. And what was the result? The result was something really cool. I told you we dropped to 80 students coming in. The year that I left, 139 students signed up for band. The biggest class they ever had. And many of those students knew that Mr. Irwin was not going to be there because I had already taken this job that I'm currently sitting in, but they chased the reputation of the program. They chased the values that the program gave them. They chased the tough and tender leadership that they knew they were going to get. They didn't have to get it from me. The students spoke for me. I'm going to skip a few slides here, Jake. Sorry, I see the time, but here's the point I want to make. One more image. We're trying to create ripple effects. I can be a stone that impacts other people. They can be stones who impact other people. What's happening here is that culture emerges from life-changing environments. Those environments emerge from communities of people who engage with each other. Leaders, tough and tender leaders, create communities, environments, and culture follows. That's what we did. We created communities of leaders. We impacted people with life-changing environments, and those pockets of people went out and impacted pockets of people, and they generated excitement and energy and leadership values for each other in ways that I could never, because I'm 46 and they were 14. They can talk to each other so much better than I can talk to them. It was about growing leaders and freeing them up to lead. And before I invite Andrew back, I'm going to tell a story. And it's not the same story that I usually tell. So if you're like, oh, here we go again. New story. I want to introduce you to Nathan. This is Nathan Jones. He was a preacher's kid. He moved into Hillgrove as a freshman, didn't know anybody. His dad got the job at Macklin Presbyterian Church. And he came to me as a freshman and said, Mr. Irwin, are you aware of how many hungry children there are in our community? And I said, Nathan, I am not aware. And he goes, so many. And then he started giving me data. I was like, wow. He goes, what if we used our amazing band program and all the students you have to impact those people? And I said, Nathan, that sounds like a great idea. It also sounds like a lot of work. Let's talk about it later. Later was 2 years later when Nathan was a junior. He had gone through 2 years of leadership. He was a little bit more confident. He had just been elected the band president, and he came back and he said, hey, Mr. Irwin, you know how many hungry children there are in our community? And I went, no. He goes, more than the last time we talked about this, so let's get moving. He goes, here's what I want to do. I want to generate an initiative called Marching Out Hunger. We're going to raise money. We're going to use that money to pack meals. We're going to have a lock-in where people get together and they celebrate and packing the meals. And then we're going to go to the schools and we're going to deliver the thing. And I went, that sounds like a lot of work. And Nathan said, I just need you to say yes because I've already got a plan. You've been teaching me how to lead for 2 years. Let me lead. And I went, go. Let's go. So he made a plan and he initiated that plan. He implemented that plan. I supported him along the way. But here's the result. Students got together and raised money. To come to the lock-in, they had to fundraise $100. That was, some of them paid, some of them fundraised. But what they did was, they got to get together, put on their beautiful hairnets and aprons. You'll see the picture here in a second. And they are packing meals together. They are weighing them, they're packing them, they're putting in. Each one of those meals fed a family of 4 for $2. And then we got together with our sponsor and our partner, No Child Hungry, and we just had an amazing experience. And what happened was, we started raising money. The very first year, we raised about $5,000. The next year, we raised $8,000. Nathan graduated, and he came back and said, we're going to keep doing this, right? And I said, sure. So you can kind of see him. I can kind of see him. He's in gray, but he was a college kid at that point. The very next year, after Nathan had already graduated, we raised, why is it not working? There. Oh, we raised so many dollars. I skipped out my whole story. $22,000. $22,000. All in that 1 year. Because what had happened was, Nathan had empowered his fellow students. They wanted to be together. They wanted to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And he basically just said, just let me lead. You've been teaching me to lead. Let me lead. And what happened? Those ripples go out into the community and then they come back from the community. We are feeding people, and then churches are coming along going, I want to donate to your program to make sure you have everything that you need. Here's a check for $5,000. because I'm watching what you guys are doing. The community showed up because we changed what was in the school and let it go out into the community, and then eventually it came back. And kind of the punchline of all this, my friends, my last point. Amplification occurs when people are freed to lead. My principal freed me up to not make music but to teach leadership. Nathan just needed to be freed up to lead. That's where the magic happened. When you free them up to lead, after intentionally growing them with the resources that you have, like iLead or whatever it is, let them go. Let them lead. That's the only way that we're going to impact the community, is to rally the students around a cause and leadership and let them go. Rally the teachers and let them go. Too much control, not going to work. Let them go. I want to make sure that you have my contact information, so I'm going to put it up here, and they can put it in the chat as well. But my email address is on the screen, as well as my website and my Instagram handle. Jump on there and reach out. I would love to see you. If you don't have the book yet, you can get it right there on my website or on Amazon.